talking about the things you can do right now while your kids are young so that you can stay connected to them, have a beautiful relationship with them as they age, and kind of teenage proof your relationship with them so that those teenage years in the future don't have to be tumultuous, they don't have to be conflict ridden, so you can keep your relationship strong through those teen years. I'm going to give you 5 practices. These practices are kind of came to light in an interview I did on my podcast this week. If you haven't listened to the podcast yet, you definitely should. The link is in my bio on Instagram, and it's in the post description here on Facebook. So if you haven't listened to it, definitely go. I talked to a dad and an expert on kind of helping teens have healthy lives. His name is Michael Arterberry. He runs programs for teens, and he gave us some beautiful insight into what parents can be doing now to raise confident, calm, purposeful, connected, and collaborative teens. And what he talked about really made me start thinking about what we can do now as parents of young kids to ensure that relationship stays strong as they age. I have younger kids. My kids are 7 and 5, and I want to make it at this point in time, I want to set ourselves up for success. And part of that is being intentional and conscious in my parenting. Look, I don't want us all to parent from fear. That's not what we do here. We don't parent from a place of scarcity, a place from lack, and a place of fear. We parent from intentions. So I want to help you get intentional about how you're parenting now with your kids when they're little, so that we can set themselves up and have a solid attachment relationship to fall back on when kids enter the teen years. Now, teenagers are supposed to be separating from us. That is one of the primary developmental objectives of the teenage years. And from a healthy attachment standpoint, they are supposed to be moving away from us. Just like when our kids are little, when they were 6 months old and learning to crawl, they would crawl away, check out some toys, and then come back and check in. Our teenagers are going to be doing that too. Our kids will do that as they get older. And it will look different than it did when they were little, but the concept is the same. They need us as a secure base. They need our relationship to fall back on. They need us as a source of information and as a source of support. And there's things that we can do now as when we have younger kids that set us all up for success in that. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. If you want this all typed out and written down, a little thing you can print off to keep it top of mind for you, if you head to the link in my show notes or in my bio, you can go ahead and get that. There's a little download, scroll all the way to the bottom. You can download it and you can have it with you. This is the content that we're talking about today is in this week's Balance Bite. And if you're on my email list, you already got it. It's already in your inbox. Okay, so the first tip we can do is to talk less and observe more. This is something that one of my parenting inspirations, Magda Gerber, talks about a lot, that we do less, observe more, and enjoy most. And that principle is so true for when it comes to building a connection with our kids, learning about them, really coming to understand them. And Michael, in my interview on the podcast, really talked about how important that is, especially with teenagers, so that we are able to know what's going on for them, so that we can figure out when things are off. If we are in touch with our kids, if we're observing them, if we're noticing them, then we know when things aren't going well for them. We're aware of them, and we can be attuned to them in that way. And then when we see things maybe aren't going so well, or maybe things are a little bit off, then we can go and check in with them. And so I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment in here if you are finding yourselves not knowing your kids, even when they're young, and you find yourselves feeling surprised about what's going on for them, or it feels like all of a sudden they're having a hard time out of nowhere. If that's happening for you, if it's coming kind of out of nowhere, that they're having a hard time or having meltdowns or a tantrum kind of springs up out of nowhere, that is your clue that you're not observing enough. And so you can take that as just information in, no judgment, and just start getting curious about your kids, who they are, what's getting in their way of meeting your expectations, how are they spending their time, what are their interests, and all of those things help our kids notice when we're attuned to them, and it helps them feel more connected and important to us, and all of those things serve to build a strong foundation, a strong relationship, that will carry us through into the teenage years. So the first tip for today is just step back and observe with curiosity and non-judgment. The second one is to embrace imperfection. As kids get older and they start noticing what other people are doing and they start engaging in the comparison game and start engaging with should in their brains, you want them to have experience. You want them to know, did I just get lost? I don't know what I did. There, I'm back. Sorry, Instagram. You want them to know that we don't have to do things perfectly. You want them to know that their worth comes from within them and not from how they're reflected and experienced on the outside. And we can model that for our kids now. We can set up an environment where they see us being imperfect, beautiful humans. Thanks, Julie, for letting me know. Where they can see us making mistakes and coming back from it, and where they can understand that by watching us be beautiful, worthy, imperfect humans, they will know those things about themselves. So that's something you can do right now. Talk with them about the mistakes you made. One practice that we have in our family is most nights when we sit down at the dinner table, we talk about one thing that we're really proud about that we did today, and then one thing that was a mistake that we made and how we came back from it or how we might choose to do it differently next time. We also have a practice of listening to a self-compassion meditation around imperfectness. I have one that you can download for free called Self-Compassion Meditation for Imperfect Families, and it's just a short 5-minute child-oriented one. My kids helped me write it. That I'd love to have you download if you want it. But embracing imperfection is a huge part of staying connected and creating an environment where children feel that they are acceptable and worthy without condition. And that's what we want for our kids. That's what we want them to know. Okay, so the third one is to stay consistent, but not rigid. And I think that this one is really important to highlight. There is a misconception out there in parenting that we have to be the same and do the same and hold boundaries in the exact same way or hold a boundary every single time. And that simply isn't true. When experts tell you to be consistent, they mean be consistent in the way you show up, in the way you hold boundaries. That doesn't mean that all of your boundaries have to be inflexible or rigid. We can change our boundaries over time. We have to. Boundaries and expectations and limits must change with kids as they grow, as they get older, as they reach new developmental stages. We can have higher expectations for kids in some areas, and then we also have to adjust our expectations for the kid who's in front of us. And doing that consistently, being open and non-rigid in our expectations, and then the way we show up with compassion, with empathy, offering lots of grace, those things help us build trust with our kids and confidence with our kids that they know that they can rely on us to hold boundaries that need to be held and to adjust boundaries and expectations that are no longer serving our family. So be consistent in the way that you show up, but not rigid in the boundaries and limits that you and expectations that you hold. So that's number 3. Julie says, I want that meditation. Yes, so if you go to lauraferrain.com/compassion, you can download it right now, and I'll send it to you. Okay, so the 4th one is collaboration is key. And in the podcast episode from this week, we talk about how to recognize when something's not working and then go to your kid and start talking about it with them. If there's limits that aren't working for your kids that they're pushing against, we have to take a step back at some point and start thinking about if my kid is consistently not meeting this expectation, or I'm consistently getting pushback around this expectation, we have to ask ourselves, is this expectation reasonable? Is it developmentally appropriate? Does it need to change because my child has changed? Or does it need to change because my child is in a place where they can't meet that expectation anymore? It's very possible that at the beginning of this pandemic, you were able to have certain expectations for your kids, that they would do their schoolwork, that they would have time limits on their screen time, that maybe are no longer serving you because we've been in this space for so long. I got to tell you, this time is stressful for parents. We're juggling a lot, but it is stressful for kids too. And they've been in it just as long as we have. We're going on 4 months of not being able to see our friends in the same way that we would maybe have been able to before, of not having the support of other adults in our lives who are important to us. Kids need an adjustment in expectations too. So collaboration is where that happens. Coming to them and say, like, look, we've been doing it this way and I'm not sure it's working anymore. What do you think? What should we do? How can we make this easier? How can we make this better? Because we have to assume the best of our kids. We have to assume that they're doing the best that they can, just like we're doing the best that we can. And coming to them from a place of collaboration is going to make them want to cooperate with you. They're going to have buy-in because they've come up with the solution. And they are going to have confidence that if the solution doesn't work, their mom and dad aren't going to be mad at them. They're not going to throw down a punishment or a consequence on them. That their mom and dad are going to come back to the drawing board and figure it out together. And that there's nothing we have to do, to be worried about. And that, again, it builds trust. And building trust in this way is crucial for having a strong foundation that will carry you into the teenage years. It's absolutely crucial. And then the fifth one is probably the most important one. Repair and reconnect. Look, my dear friends, you are going to make mistakes as a parent. It's going to happen. It happens to me. We're human. We do. We experience stressors. We experience overwhelm. We lose touch and get out of balance. And then we show up as parents that aren't, that's not in the way that serves us and serves our family and serves our higher goals. It happens. And in that moment, when it happens, take some time, reconnect to your higher goals, your higher purpose as a parent, and then go to your child and repair and reconnect. Let them know that no matter what life throws at you, you are going to be there for them. That no matter what they do, how they show up in their behavior, that your love is untouchable. And repairing is the way you do that. Again, it builds trust. It lets them know that nothing is going to get in the way of your relationship with them, and that no matter how far they go out from your relationship, that they can always come back to it, that you will always be their secure base. And teenagers especially need to know that. They need to know that they can push away and distance and still come back. They have to know that. They have to. And so that the repairing and reconnecting now when they're young is what shows them that. Again, it builds trust, it builds that relationship, it builds that connection that is resilient and can take all the things that the teenage years throw at them. That's what I want for my relationship growing up, as my kids age and grow. And I know that that's what you want too. All right, so those are my 5 tips. I'm just going to go over them one more time. Talk less, observe more, embrace imperfection, stay consistent and not rigid, collaboration is key, and repair and reconnect. And these 5 things together build a strong foundation of connection and respect between the two of you that will carry you through those tumultuous teen years, so that they don't actually have to be tumultuous, that they can be honest and authentic and grounded in trust and respect. That's the goal, right? So set those intentions, engage in these practices now, build that foundation, and talk to me in 10 years when your kids are teens. And I'll love to see how it all shook out. Okay.